The quantum jump should have taken 12 minutes. It had been 3 hours and something was very wrong. Dr. Emma Rodriguez pressed her hands against the science station's cool metal surface, watching the navigation displays flicker with error, messages she had never seen before. The research vessel Stellar Dawn shuddered around her, its hull groaning with stress fractures from whatever had gone wrong during their jump through folded space. "All stop," Captain Arya called from the center of the bridge. Her voice remained steady, but Emma could see the tension in her shoulders. "Damage report from all stations." The replies came quickly, each one worse than the last. The navigation computer was completely dead. The quantum drive had burned out 3 of its primary coils. Life support was running on backup power, which meant they had maybe 48 hours of breathable air if they were lucky. Emma's hands moved across her instruments, trying to make sense of the star patterns outside. She had been mapping stellar formations for 15 years, but nothing looked familiar. The constellations were all wrong. Even the nebulae in the distance seemed alien, their colors shifted into spectrums she had never recorded. "Where are we?" asked Lieutenant Kai, the ship's communications officer. His usually calm demeanor was cracking as he stared at his screens. Emma shook her head. "I don't know. We're not in any mapped sector. The stellar cartography database shows nothing that matches what I'm seeing." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of failing systems. The Stellar Dawn was a good ship, built for long-range scientific missions, but it was never designed to survive alone in uncharted space. They were supposed to be surveying a routine system jump, collecting mineral samples and scanning for habitable worlds. Instead, they were lost in a place that might not even be in their own galaxy. Captain Arya moved to the communication station. "Kai, start broadcasting a general distress signal on all frequencies. Include our last known position and what happened during the jump." "Already working on it," he replied, his fingers dancing over the controls. "But Captain, if we're as far out as it looks, it could take years for anyone to receive it." Emma felt her stomach drop. She looked around the bridge at her crewmates. There were 12 people aboard the Stellar Dawn, representing 4 different species from the Galactic Research Council. They had families, homes, lives waiting for them. Now they were drifting in the void with dwindling supplies and no way home. The next 2 days passed like a nightmare. They tried everything. Rerouting. Power from non-essential systems bought them a few extra hours of life support. Emergency repairs managed to get some of the navigation sensors working, but they only confirmed what Emma already knew. They were in completely unknown space, farther from home than any ship had ever traveled. Sleep came in short, restless periods. Emma found herself checking and rechecking her star charts, hoping to find some familiar pattern, some clue that might tell them which direction led home. But the universe outside remained cold and strange. On the 3rd day, something changed. Emma was alone on the bridge during the night shift when Kai's communications board lit up with an incoming signal. She rushed to wake him, her heart pounding, with sudden hope. "It's definitely artificial," Kai said as he studied the transmission. "Someone's answering our distress call." "Can you understand it?" Emma asked. Kai frowned at his screens. "It's in perfect galactic standard. But that's impossible. We're millions of light years from any inhabited system." Captain Arya arrived on No, the bridge still pulling on her uniform jacket. "What do we have?" "An incoming message," Kai replied. "They're identifying themselves as a human vessel." "Human?" Arya looked as confused as Emma felt. "There are no human colonies this far out. No colonies of any species." Kai played the message. The voice that came through the speakers was clear and warm, speaking flawless galactic standard with a slight accent Emma couldn't place. "Research vessel Stellar Dawn, this is Captain Tom of the deep space vessel Wanderer's Hope. We have received your distress signal and are moving to intercept. Please maintain your current position and prepare for assistance. You are not alone out here." Emma felt tears in her eyes. After 3 days of hopelessness, hearing another human voice felt like a miracle. But questions immediately flooded her mind. How could there be humans this deep in uncharted space? How had they survived? And how had they found the Stellar Dawn so quickly? "Respond," Captain Arya ordered. Tell them we're grateful for their assistance and ask for their estimated time of arrival. Kai sent the reply. The answer came back within minutes. Stellar Dawn, we will reach you in approximately 6 hours. Do not be alarmed by our ship's appearance. We have adapted our vessels for deep space travel. Prepare your crew for transfer to our vessel if necessary. Captain Tom out. Emma spent the next few hours watching the sensors, hoping to catch sight of their rescuers. When the Wanderer's Hope finally appeared on their screens, she gasped. The ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Stellar Dawn. But it didn't look like any human vessel she had ever seen. Its hull seemed to shift and flow, covered in what looked like organic growths. Sections of it pulsed with soft bioluminescent light, and Emma could swear she saw the metal itself breathing. What kind of ship is that? Lieutenant Kai whispered. Captain, Arya stared at the approaching vessel. I don't know, but right now it's our salvation. As the Wanderer's Hope drew closer, Emma realized their rescue was just the beginning of something much larger and more mysterious than she had ever imagined. These humans had not just survived in deep space, they had evolved, adapted, and built something entirely new. The distress signal had been answered, but by whom? And what had they become during their long exile in the darkness between the stars? The docking bay of the Wanderer's Hope defied everything Dr. Emma Rodriguez thought she knew about starship design. As the Stellar Dawn was gently drawn inside the massive vessel, Emma watched through the viewports in amazement. The walls of the ES bay seemed to be alive, covered in a network of veins that pulsed with soft blue light. The deck plating rippled slightly as magnetic clamps secured their ship, adjusting automatically to provide a perfect seal. It's like we're being swallowed by some giant creature, Lieutenant Kai whispered beside her. Captain Arya gathered the crew near the airlock. Remember, these people saved our lives. Whatever questions we have about their ship or technology, we stay respectful and grateful. The airlock cycled with a sound Emma had never heard before, more like a sigh than the usual mechanical hiss. When the doors opened, they revealed a figure that looked human but somehow different. Captain Tom was tall and lean, with skin that seemed to carry a faint luminescence. His eyes were larger than normal, adapted for seeing in the darkness of deep space. He wore clothing that appeared to be grown rather than manufactured, fitting his body perfectly and shifting color slightly as he moved. Welcome aboard the Wanderer's Hope, he said, his voice carrying the same warmth they had heard over the communications. I know this must be overwhelming, but you're safe now. Behind him stood several other crew members, all displaying similar adaptations. Emma noticed their fingers were longer, more sensitive looking, and their movements had a fluid grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Captain Tom, Arya stepped forward. I'm Captain Arya of the Stellar Dawn. We can't thank you enough for responding to our distress call, but I have to ask, how are there humans this far from any known colony? Tom smiled, and Emma saw that his teeth had a pearl-like quality. It's a long story, and one better told in comfort. Your ship will be safe in our bay while we make repairs. Would you and your crew join us in our community spaces? There's much you need to understand about this region of space. They followed Tom through corridors that breathed around them. The walls were covered in the same organic material as the docking bay, creating a sensation of walking through living tissue. Soft light emanated from the surfaces themselves, adjusting brightness as they passed. How long have your people been out here? Emma asked. 312 years, Tom replied casually. My great-great-grandmother was part of the original Colonial Expedition 47. They were heading to establish a settlement in the Andromeda approach when their quantum drive malfunctioned. Emma did quick math in her head. Expedition 47 had been one of the early deep space colonial attempts, launched when quantum drive technology was still experimental. They had been declared lost when they failed to reach their destination. Instead of dying in the void, Tom continued, they found something remarkable. This region of space isn't empty. It's full of life and resources that don't exist in normal space. They learned to adapt, to harvest what they needed, and to build ships that could survive here indefinitely. They entered a vast chamber that took Emma's breath away. It was clearly the heart of the ship, but it looked more like a garden than a command center. Plants she didn't recognize grew from the walls and ceiling, their leaves processing the air. Pools of water reflected soft light, and she could see fish-like creatures swimming in them. Hundreds of people moved through the space, all showing the same gentle adaptations as Tom. Children played in areas where artificial gravity was lighter, leaping and floating in ways that would be impossible on a normal ship. Adults tended to the growing plants and maintained systems that seemed to merge biology and technology seamlessly. "This is incredible," Captain Arya breathed. "You've built an entire civilization." "Not just us," Tom said, leading them to a viewing area. Through transparent walls, Emma could see outside the ship. What she saw made her gasp. Dozens of other vessels moved in formation with the Wanderer's Hope, each one unique but clearly part of the same fleet. Some were long and serpentine, covered in solar collectors that looked like scales. Others were spherical, with gardens visible through their transparent sections. The largest was shaped like a flower, its petals slowly opening and closing as it harvested energy from cosmic radiation. "We call ourselves the Deep Wanderers," Tom explained. "We're not just one ship, but a mobile civilization. We've learned to live in harmony with the unique life forms that exist in this region." Emma watched as something that looked like a school of luminous jellyfish passed between the ships. The creatures were enormous, each one the size of a shuttle, and they moved with obvious intelligence. "Those are the drift shepherds," Tom said, following her gaze. "They've been our partners for over 2 centuries. They help us navigate the deep currents and warn us of dangers." "What kind of dangers?" Arya asked. Tom's expression grew serious. "The deep void isn't empty, but not everything in it is friendly. There are entities that feed on energy, on life itself. We've learned to avoid them, to hide from them. But your arrival here may have created complications." Emma felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "Your quantum jump left a signature," Tom explained. "A trail of energy that leads back toward inhabited space. Things that have been hunting us for generations might now be able to follow that trail to your home worlds." The weight of his words sank in. Emma realized they weren't just rescued survivors anymore. They might have inadvertently led an ancient threat straight to the heart of galactic civilization. "But there's hope," Tom continued. "You carry knowledge we've been without for centuries. Your ship's technology, combined with what we've learned out here, might give us the tools we need to finally stop running." Captain Arya stepped closer to the viewing window, watching the fleet of impossible ships. "What are you asking?" "Help us," Tom said simply. "Share your knowledge of current galactic technology. Let us learn from each other. Together, we might be able to face the darkness that's been chasing my people for 3 centuries. Emma looked around at the living ship, at the adapted humans who had found a way to thrive in the deepest void, at the alien partners who had helped them survive. She thought about the trail of energy leading back to her home, and the unknown, threats that might follow it. They had come looking for scientific data on a routine mission. Instead, they had found something far more significant, proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its weapons, but its ability to adapt, to find hope in the darkest places, and to build communities even in the vast emptiness between the stars. The rescue was complete, but Emma realized their real mission was just beginning. 3 weeks aboard the Wanderer's Hope had shown Dr. Emma Rodriguez wonders beyond her wildest imagination. But it was the morning she met the archive keeper that everything truly changed. Deep in the ship's lower levels, where the boundary between technology and biology became completely blurred, Elder Maya tended to what the Deep Wanderers called the memory gardens. Here, living walls stored the entire history of their people, growing new sections as experiences were added and old memories became part of the ship's consciousness. "Your arrival has stirred up memories we thought lost," Maya said, her voice carrying the wisdom of decades in the void. Her adaptations were more pronounced than Tom's. Her eyes were almost entirely black, perfect for seeing in the absolute darkness between stars, and her fingers ended in sensitive tendrils that could interface directly with the ship's living systems. Emma watched in fascination as Maya placed her hand against a section of wall that immediately began to glow. Images flickered across its surface, the early days of the Deep Wanderers when they first learned to bond with the ship's living systems. In the beginning, we nearly died, Maya explained. Traditional human technology couldn't survive in deep space. The cosmic radiation, the absolute cold, the isolation, it was killing us slowly, until we encountered the symbionts. The wall showed images of microscopic creatures that looked like tiny stars, pulsing with their own internal light. They were drifting in space looking for hosts, not as parasites but as partners. They needed our intelligence and purpose. We needed their ability to process cosmic energy and resist radiation. Emma leaned closer to the display. You merged with alien organisms? We chose life over purity, Maya said simply. The symbionts didn't change what made us human. They enhanced it, made us capable of thriving in environments where unenhanced humans would perish within hours. Over the following days, Emma explored more of the ship with Lieutenant Kai and Captain Arya. They discovered workshops where Deep Wanderers grew tools from crystalline matrices, their hands shaping matter at the molecular level. In the engineering sections, they found reactor cores that weren't built but cultivated, living fusion plants that processed hydrogen from space dust and stellar wind. It's like they've become gardeners of technology, Kai observed as they watched. A technician coaxed new circuits from what looked like coral. Everything they make is alive. Captain Tom joined them in the observation deck that evening, bringing samples of their food. Fruits that grew in zero gravity, their cells modified to create perfect nutrition from starlight and cosmic particles. We've learned to read the deep currents, he explained as they ate. Space isn't empty out here. It's full of energy patterns, migrations of living matter, ancient structures left by civilizations that existed before your galaxy even formed. Through the transparent walls, Emma could see one such structure in the distance, a ring-shaped construction that dwarfed even their massive fleet. Its surface was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as she watched. That's a navigator's gate, Tom said, following her gaze. We don't know who built them, but they're scattered throughout the deep void. Some still function, opening passages through space-time that bypass normal physics entirely. Have you explored them? Captain Arya asked. Tom's expression darkened. Some, but they're not unguarded. The deeper we go into the void secrets, the more attention we attract from things that prefer the darkness. As if summoned by his words, an alarm began to sound. Not the harsh mechanical warning of a normal ship, but a low, harmonic tone that seemed to come from the vessel's very bones. What is that? Emma asked. Tom was already moving toward the bridge, his movements taking on an urgency she hadn't seen before. Shadow sign. Something's tracking us. They followed him to the bridge, which Emma realized was actually a living creature itself, a vast neural network that the ship's pilots interfaced with directly. A woman with silver hair and completely black eyes was connected to the ship's consciousness through tendrils that grew from her fingers and scalp. Report, Navigator Nora, Tom said. 3 shadow signatures bearing 7 Mark 12 relative, Nora replied, her voice distant and echoing. They're following the energy trail left by our guest's arrival. Emma felt cold fear in her stomach. The Void Hunters you mentioned? Tom nodded grimly. They feed on life energy, particularly the kind produced by large populations. They've been following our fleet for decades, but we've always managed to stay ahead of them. Your quantum signature gave them a direct path to track. On the bridge's living displays, Emma could see the approaching threats, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, moving with terrible purpose through space. Each one was roughly the size of a small moon, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. How do we fight them? Captain Arya asked. We don't, Tom replied. We run, hide, and hope they lose interest. Fighting them is death. They absorb energy weapons and use the power to become stronger. But as Emma watched the displays, she noticed something the Deep Wanderers seemed to have missed. Wait, she said, pointing to the readouts from her cruise ship. The stellar dawn is still broadcasting on quantum frequencies. Our emergency beacon. It's been sending out location data this entire time. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The beacon wasn't just telling rescuers where they were. It was giving the Void Hunters a constant signal to follow. "We have to shut it down," Emma said. "It's too late for that," Nora said from her neural interface. "They've already locked onto the signal. Shutting it down now won't make them lose us." Tom studied the approaching shadows on the display. "There might be another way. Your ship's quantum drive, even damaged, it still carries technology we lost centuries ago. If we could modify it, combine it with our biotech." "You want to use our ship as a weapon?" Arya asked. "Not a weapon," Tom said. "A beacon, but one that sends the wrong signal. If we can modify your drive to broadcast on the same frequency as the navigator's gates, we might be able to convince the hunters that we've opened a passage to another part of the void." Emma understood immediately. "A false trail. Make them think we've jumped to somewhere else entirely." "Exactly. But it would require completely rebuilding your quantum core using our biotechnology. Your ship would never be the same. It would become something new, something that bridges both our civilizations." Captain Arya looked at her crew. Emma could see the weight of decision in her eyes. They could try to run, but the hunters would eventually catch them. They could surrender their ship's independence and trust these adapted humans with technology that could change everything, or they could find a third option. "There's something else we could try," Emma said slowly. "What if we don't try to trick them? What if we give them what they're really looking for?" Tom frowned. "They want life energy, the power generated by large populations." "Then let's give them a population," Emma said, her mind racing. "Not real people, but a quantum simulation. A false reading that makes them think they've found exactly what they're hunting for." She looked around the bridge at the adapted humans, at their living ships, at the impossible civilization they had built in the deep void. "You've learned to partner with alien life. You've grown technology that thinks and breathes. Can you help us create a quantum ghost, a false signal so convincing that ancient predators will chase it instead of following the real trail back to inhabited space?" The silence stretched as Tom considered her words. Finally, he smiled, and Emma saw something she recognized despite all his adaptations: the unmistakable human gleam of a person facing an impossible challenge and choosing to fight rather than flee. "It's insane," he said. "It's never been attempted. And it might be the key to finally stopping these things permanently." The Void Hunters were still approaching, but now Emma felt something she hadn't experienced since their rescue: hope, not just for survival, but for victory. The first Void Hunter ship emerged from the darkness like a wound in space itself. Dr. Emma Rodriguez watched from the modified bridge of the stellar dawn as scanners registered something that shouldn't exist: a vessel that absorbed all electromagnetic radiation while generating gravitational fields strong enough to bend starlight. The geometric patterns covering its hull seemed to shift and writhe, creating optical illusions that made her eyes water. "Reading confirms 3 vessels, each approximately 15 kilometers in length," reported Lieutenant Kai, his voice tight with controlled fear. "They're maintaining formation and closing on our position." Beside him, Navigator Nora of the Deep. Wanderers remained connected to the Wanderer's Hope through her neural interface, her completely black eyes seeing things no normal human could perceive. "The shadow ships are old," she whispered. "Older than our galaxy. They've been hunting through the void since before stars learned how to die." Captain Tom stood between the two crews, his adapted features tense with generations of inherited fear. "My people have been running from them for 3 centuries. Every time we thought we'd found safety, they appeared again. They don't just hunt ships, they consume entire civilizations." Emma forced herself to focus on the work before her. For the past week, teams from both vessels had been laboring to create something that had never been attempted: a quantum ghost that could fool predators older than recorded history. The Stellar Dawn's damaged drive core had been rebuilt using Deep Wanderer biotechnology, creating a hybrid system that pulsed with organic life. "Final systems check," Captain Arya called out. "Emma, how's our quantum signature generator?" Emma's hands moved across controls that responded to touch like living skin. The modified drive core had been integrated with symbiont organisms, creating a fusion of technology and biology that could generate false energy signatures on a massive scale. Bio-quantum matrix is stable, she reported. The symbionts are responding to the harmonic frequencies. When we activate the system, it should create a signature that mimics a population center of 50 million people. And the delivery system? Tom asked. Lieutenant Kai checked his displays. The quantum torpedo is ready. Once we launch it, it will carry the false signature away from us at faster than light speeds. The hunters should follow it instead of tracking us. But even as they spoke, the approaching vessels began to change. The lead hunter ship stopped its advance and began to pulse with malevolent light. Geometric patterns along its hull rearranged themselves into new configurations, and Emma felt a wave of wrongness wash over her, as if reality itself was being twisted by the alien vessel's presence. "They're scanning us," Nora said, her voice distant and echoing. "They know something is different. They can sense the mixed signatures from both our ships." Alarms began sounding throughout both vessels as the hunter ships changed course, spreading out to surround the small fleet. Emma realized with growing horror that their plan might be too late. "They're not going to wait for us to launch the decoy," she said. "They know we're up to something." Tom moved to the communication station. "All ships prepare for emergency scatter protocol. If we can't trick them, we'll have to try to outrun them." But Navigator Nora shook her head, her neural tendrils pulsing with urgent signals from the living ship. "The other hunters are moving to intercept any escape routes. They've been hunting as a pack for millennia. They know how prey tries to run." Emma watched the tactical display in growing despair. The Void Hunters had them completely surrounded, and their ships were closing in with predatory patience. Worse, she could see energy readings building in their hulls. They were preparing to feed. "There has to be another way," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. Elder Maya's voice came through the communication system from deep within the Wanderer's hope. "Child, there is something you should know about the Hunters. We have learned much about them over the centuries." "What kind of something?" Captain Arya asked. "They are not truly alive, not as we understand life. They are constructs, created by a civilization that died out eons ago. They were built to preserve their creators by consuming and storing the life energy of other species." Emma felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. If they're storing energy rather than consuming it, then somewhere inside those ships is the collected life force of every civilization they've destroyed, Maya finished. Billions of souls trapped and used as fuel for their endless hunt. The implications were staggering. Emma looked at the biotechnological systems around her, at the living ships of the deep wanderers, at the symbiont organisms that had learned to work in partnership rather than dominance. "What if we don't try to trick them or outrun them?" she said slowly. "What if we try to communicate with what's trapped inside them?" Tom stared at her. "That's impossible. The energy patterns would be too chaotic, too damaged." "Not with normal technology," Emma agreed. "But your people have learned to interface directly with living systems. The symbionts can process and translate almost any form of energy signature. What if we could reach the trapped life forces and help them break free?" Nora's eyes widened, her neural interface sparking with sudden activity. "The ship consciousness is responding to the idea. It believes the trapped souls might be trying to escape even now." Emma rushed to her modified controls. "I need to reconfigure the quantum ghost system. Instead of creating a false population signature, we need to broadcast a liberation frequency, something that could disrupt the containment systems inside the hunter ships." "You're talking about freeing the accumulated life energy of billions of beings," Captain Tom said. "The power release would be massive," Emma agreed. "But maybe that's what we need. Turn their own stored power against them." The hunter ships were almost in firing range now, their hulls beginning to glow with harvesting energy. Emma worked frantically, her hands moving through biotechnological interfaces that responded to her thoughts as much as her touch. The symbiont organisms in the quantum drive began to resonate. their internal light shifting to frequencies that existed beyond normal space-time. "Got it," she called out. "I'm reading response patterns from inside the hunter ships. There are consciousness fragments in there, and they're aware. They want to be free." Captain Arya gripped her command chair as the nearest hunter ship powered up its feeding arrays. "Do it, Emma. Whatever you're going to try, do it now." Emma engaged the modified quantum system. Instead of creating a false signature to lead the hunters away, she broadcast a complex harmonic frequency designed to resonate with trapped life energy, a frequency that sang of freedom, of home, of the peace that comes after long imprisonment. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The hunter ships stopped their advance as if struck by a physical blow. Their geometric hull patterns began to shift chaotically, and cracks of brilliant light appeared along their surfaces. "It's working," Kai reported, his voice filled with amazement. "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations inside all 3 vessels." Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she sensed the response from the trapped souls. Gratitude, hope, and a desperate rush toward freedom that had been denied for countless eons. Through her connection to the biotechnological systems, she could feel their joy as ancient prisons finally began to crack open. The first hunter ship simply came apart, dissolving into streams of pure light that scattered across space like freed butterflies. The other 2 ships began to follow, their containment systems failing as billions of liberated souls chose to return to the cosmic energy from which all life springs. But as the hunter ships died, Emma realized that their victory had created a new problem. The freed energy was forming into something else, something vast and powerful and entirely unpredictable. "We've broken the cages," she said, watching streams of liberated life force swirl through space. "But now we need to help them find their way home." The real battle was just beginning. The liberated energy dancing through space around them was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Dr. Emma Rodriguez watched through the bridge viewports as streams of pure consciousness spiraled past the ships, each one representing the collected life force of entire civilizations. Some moved with purpose as if they remembered where home used to be. Others swirled in confused patterns, lost after eons of imprisonment. "The energy patterns are destabilizing local space-time," reported Lieutenant Kai, his voice tight with concentration. "If we don't do something soon, they could tear open rifts that might never close." Navigator Nora, still connected to the Wanderer's hope through her neural interface, spoke in a voice that echoed with harmonics from the ship's living consciousness. "The freed souls are trying to return to their points of origin, but many of their home systems no longer exist. They're becoming trapped in feedback loops." Captain Tom moved between the control stations, his adapted features showing strain as he processed information flowing from multiple biotechnological systems. "We need to help them find peace, but how do you guide the spirits of dead civilizations?" Emma felt the answer forming in her mind as she watched the chaotic dance of liberated energy. The solution lay in everything they had learned during their time with the Deep Wanderers: the power of partnership, the strength that came from choosing cooperation over dominance. "We don't guide them," she said. "We invite them to guide us." She moved to the quantum communication array, her hands interfacing with the biotechnological systems that had saved them all. The symbiont organisms responded to her thoughts, their internal light shifting to match the frequencies of the freed consciousness streams. "I'm opening a communication channel," Emma announced. "Not to command or control, but to offer partnership, to let them know they have choices." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of voices spoke in harmonies that existed beyond sound, sharing memories of worlds that had died, civilizations that had reached for the stars only to be consumed by ancient hunger. But beneath the sadness was something else: gratitude, hope, and a desperate desire to ensure that their suffering had meaning. Elder Maya's voice came through the ship's communication system from the memory gardens deep within the Wanderers. "Hope. Child, the archive is responding. The freed souls want to share their knowledge, to leave something behind that might prevent other civilizations from suffering the same fate." Emma felt tears on her cheeks as images flooded her mind, not through the ship's displays but directly into her consciousness through the symbiont interface. She saw the birth and death of 1,000 civilizations, learned about technologies and philosophies that spanned millions of years, witnessed the infinite creativity of life reaching toward light even in the darkest void. "They're teaching us," she whispered. "Showing us how to build defenses against things like the hunters, how to recognize the signs of ancient predators awakening, how to find each other across the dark spaces between galaxies." Captain Arya stepped closer to the communication array. "Can they help us get home? Can they show us the way back to inhabited space?" The answer came as a wave of warmth and certainty. The freed souls knew every path through the deep void, every current and hidden route that connected the spaces between stars. More than that, they wanted to help, not just to guide the lost ships home, but to join them in carrying their hard-won knowledge back to living civilizations. "They're offering to merge with our navigation systems," Nora reported, her black eyes reflecting streams of light that danced through the bridge. "To become part of our ship's consciousness and help us map the deep void safely." Tom looked uncertain. "Partnership with entities that powerful could change us in ways we can't predict?" Emma understood his caution, but she also felt the gentle intentions of the freed souls. They had been prisoners for so long that the last thing they wanted was to imprison others. They offered knowledge and guidance, but only to those who chose to accept it freely. "The choice is ours," she said. "But think about what we could accomplish together. Your people have learned to thrive in the deep void. My people have access to the resources of inhabited space. And these ancient souls have knowledge that spans the entire history of the galaxy." Captain Tom was quiet for a long moment, watching. The streams of liberated energy flow past their ships. Finally, he nodded. "The deep wanderers have always survived by choosing partnership over isolation. If these beings truly offer cooperation rather than control, then we accept," Captain Arya finished. "But carefully, with full understanding of what we're agreeing to." Emma initiated the merger protocol, feeling the ship's biotechnological systems respond with eager anticipation. The symbiont organisms began to resonate with new frequencies as ancient consciousness patterns integrated themselves into the vessel's living matrix. The change was immediate and profound. Emma felt her awareness expand beyond the confines of her physical body, touching minds that had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. But instead of being overwhelmed, she found herself supported and guided, as if she had gained millions of wise advisors who wanted nothing more than to share their hard-earned wisdom. "Navigation systems are responding," Kai reported, his voice filled with wonder. "I can see pathways through space that weren't there before. Safe routes that avoid the hunting grounds of other predators, passages that could cut travel time between galaxies by centuries." Through the enhanced sensors, Emma could perceive the deep void as it truly was. Not empty space, but a living ecosystem filled with currents of energy, migrations of exotic matter, and the ruins of civilizations that had risen and fallen across cosmic time. Most importantly, she could see the bright threads that connected all living worlds, the quantum pathways that allowed consciousness to reach across impossible distances. "I can see home," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as she perceived the distant glow of her own galaxy. "Not just the direction, I can see the exact route that will take us safely back to inhabited space." But even as joy filled her heart, Emma realized that their mission had evolved far beyond simple rescue and return. They carried knowledge. Now that could revolutionize galactic civilization's understanding of deep space. More than that, they carried proof that even in the darkest void, life finds a way to endure, adapt, and ultimately triumph over forces that seem impossible to defeat. "We can't just go home," she said, looking around at both crews. "We have a responsibility to share what we've learned, to prepare our people for what's out there in the deep dark." Tom smiled, his adapted features showing the same determination that had kept his people alive for 3 centuries. "The deep wanderers are ready to end our exile. It's time to rejoin the greater community and add our knowledge to theirs." Over the following days, they prepared for the long journey home. The freed souls helped them modify both ships for the passage, integrating ancient knowledge with modern technology and deep wanderer biosystems. The result was something unprecedented: vessels that could navigate the deep void safely while carrying crews that represented the best of multiple civilizations. When they finally began the journey back to inhabited space, they traveled not as refugees seeking rescue, but as ambassadors carrying the combined wisdom of countless civilizations. The liberated consciousness patterns rode with them, eager to see what new wonders living beings had created in the galaxy they had been forced to leave behind. Emma stood on the bridge of the transformed stellar dawn, watching stars grow brighter as they approached the outer edges of known space. Beside her, Captain Tom prepared to see worlds he had only heard about in stories passed down through generations of exile. "What do you think they'll make of us?" Tom asked, gesturing toward the biotechnological systems that now formed an integral part of both ships. Emma smiled, feeling the gentle presence of ancient minds that had chosen to share their journey home. "I think they'll learn what we did, that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to find partners in the most unlikely places, to choose cooperation over conquest, and to turn even the darkest void into a place where life can flourish." As they entered the outer beacon network that marked the beginning of inhabited space, Emma sent out a message that would change everything. Not a distress call this time, but an announcement of return, and an invitation to join a community that now spanned not just star systems, but the infinite spaces between them. They had been lost in deep space until a human ship answered their call. Now they were home, bringing with them proof that no matter how far into the darkness life might wander, it always finds a way to kindle new light and reach toward hope. The deep void would never be empty again, and neither would humanity now, that they knew they were part of something infinitely larger and more wonderful than they had ever dared to imagine.